That is an extremely hot take.
It's so hot that I don't
that
tell
we're cutting it from the podcast.
I just love thinking about Isaac doing domestic things around his house.
Well, I was hosting for Christmas.
It's literally like the cutest thing I could ever think of.
Mine was, do not wait for people to be flawless before you allow yourself to adore them. Adore them anyway.
Aww.
And that was a really good one too.
I had that as well.
Yeah.
Let's go beyond the first page. Let's go beyond the first page.
Welcome back, second pagers. This is Beyond the First Page podcast with siblings Phoebe, Phil, and Isaac. I'm Phoebe.
I'm Phil.
I'm Isaac.
And if you can believe it, this is Club Meeting 26, Impossible Creatures by Kathrine Rundell. And before we get started, I just want to remind everyone, as always, if you like this podcast, please subscribe to our Spotify, YouTube channel, follow us on Instagram. And if you really enjoy listening to the podcast, please feel free to give us a 5-star review. Also, because this is a book club style podcast, we will be discussing spoilers and major plot points from all the books that we discuss, and in particular for this episode, Impossible Creatures. And so really recommend that you listen to the book or read the book and then come on and listen to the podcast. And that way we will not spoil anything for you. As you can see, Isaac is very festive in his Christmas shirt. We all celebrate Christmas. And I wanted to share our favorite traditions, family traditions from the holidays. So I would say out to you to pick your favorite Christmas or Thanksgiving, honestly, any holiday that we celebrate. This is the spirit of the holidays. And so any holiday that you celebrate, favorite family tradition. And I don't have one, so I'm going to popcorn Phil.
There you go. So I'm going to steal the best one, which is my favorite one. We write poems for each other, and those are on Christmas. It's usually the last gift, and it's like a clue poem where the other person has to find the gift, and you write them a poem that gives them hints to find it. So that's one of my favorite Christmas traditions, and
I hate that Christmas
I know. I love it.
I hate writing the poem. I had ChatGPT write it for me last year.
You're the worst.
Do you like it, Isaac?
I am ambivalent. I like it.
Yeah. Is ambivalent the right word?
I think so.
I
Maybe
would say
not.
it is the correct usage of that word, but I would say it is actually the not correct way to describe it. I'm more than ambivalent. I do like it. I like it, but I don't miss it when I don't do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm kind of the same. I like finding a gift, though. That's fun. Isaac, what about you? Favorite holiday tradition?
Mine is the oatmeal with raisins and brown sugar on Christmas morning. It is I think the only tradition of all the traditions in my life that I have never missed. And it's for Christmas morning for the listeners. Our grandfather started it, and it was because their family, their Christmas present was getting raisins and brown sugar in their oatmeal instead of just normal oatmeal on Christmas morning.
Yeah.
And it is a good just reminder of look how far we've come. So that's my favorite
And
one.
be grateful for what you have, don't you think?
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, that's all part of it.
See, I am very.
I love how you were
ambivalent
look
about
how
that
far
one.
we've come.
Well, just
Wait.
to be look
Yeah,
at
you're
you're
right. Right.
you're in your living room, or the trees all lit up, all this 2 generations ago, this was it, and then they went out and milked
Yeah.
the cows, and it was a normal day.
Yeah.
Right.
I'm ambivalent about that one. to
I
be
cannot
honest.
believe that you're saying that right now, Phil.
I know everyone really.
That is an extremely hot take.
It's so hot that I don't.
That
tell
we're
anybody
cutting
that.
it from the podcast.
Yeah,
Right,
I can't
yeah,
hear
like
this.
No, I just I'm not ambivalent about the thoughts behind it. I think talking it through gets the point across, because at this point we all like oatmeal. I don't get that. It used to be
It's not. You're not supposed to not like oatmeal. It's supposed to be the brown sugar and raisins
And the
make it
raisins.
special.
But they don't, because I've seen people eat oatmeal on regular days, and you use brown sugar and raisins in your regular oatmeal,
Well,
so that
you're never gonna
I'm
you're
not
never
gonna
gonna
win.
like
I
argue
love
this.
the
Yeah.
sentiment behind it. I do,
But it's
and
not a
that's why
tradition
I'm
if you just
ambivalent.
talk about
Ambivalent is-
sediment.
But okay, I mean, yeah, sue me. I don't. I guess I like doing
You're
it when I'm
sued.
with you guys. I don't like. Isaac is really great about doing it on his own. I don't do it on.
I
my
do it
own.
on my own.
Oh yeah,
Okay.
I've made it with the Chicos every year. I've been deployed, had all my friends do it.
Yeah.
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 Yeah. Phil,
I know it's a losing
I don't even
take.
know what to
I'm
say
not
to
saying
you.
I'm right. I'm just saying that's how I feel.
I'm going to go with an understated one. And although Halloween has passed, I liked that mom and dad, but mostly mom threw us Halloween parties when we were in 6th grade.
Yeah,
Like, everyone
joke's
threw a
on you
Halloween
because I
party.
did not get one. So us is 2 of you. That's not a tradition if it's 2 of 3. Okay, redo.
I don't think that's really a tradition if you
Yeah.
If you do it one
That
time,
was worse.
okay.
That was worse than my not liking the oatmeal.
Phil, you didn't get one.
No.
Okay, Isaac's was definitely the best. Mine was also very good, but I really thought you got one. Anyways, okay, we'll just gloss over that. I think my other favorite tradition is it's a tie between sunrise Easter service, but I don't really do that.
Yeah.
I'm not very good about that
I've
tradition.
never missed.
That's good of you. So I will go with also then a Christmas tradition, which is popcorn cranberries on the Christmas tree. I am very diligent about the popcorn cranberries.
Yeah.
That is another tradition I have never missed.
That's a good one.
And if anyone does not know, which I feel like a lot of people don't, we string up like plain popcorn and cranberry, 2 popcorn, 1 cranberry around the whole tree like garland. And I was at our cousin's house one time doing this, and they don't do 2 popcorn, 1 cranberry. You're allowed to pick your own pattern. And I was like, what is
That's
this
really
anarchy?
silly.
But then I was like, maybe it is a little crazy that mom made us do 2 popcorn, 1 cranberry, no matter what.
Morgan and I talked about that yesterday, that we're going to do that this year because we're picking up a tree
Yeah.
on the way back.
I did
Yeah,
my
that's a
first
good
Christmas
one.
tree last year, like on my own, and I did that. It was cool.
You did it?
Yeah, but it was the first time I'd ever decorated for Christmas. Like,
So that's when you
Same.
did
I've
it.
never
Yeah.
decorated for Christmas.
I just love thinking about Isaac doing domestic things around his house.
well, I
by
was
himself.
hosting for Christmas.
It's literally like the cutest thing I could ever think of.
It is really, when you live alone, it's really hard to do something if you're not
Yeah.
like having people over. Like, it's just
Oh
like,
yeah,
why?
I never
Yeah, there's
even
no-
considered doing it.
Yeah.
In
I
pilot
stole
training, my
poinsettias
friend
from the
Ben.
dining hall one year, and that's about it.
In pilot training, my friend Ben had a Texas Tech wreath, and that's the most I've decorated
That was
for Christmas
it. Texas Tech.
since I was since I
funny.
left the house.
And now that we've talked about the holidays a little bit, we can go back to reading and Impossible Creatures. And Isaac, would you be able to give us this book in 60 seconds?
Yep. Impossible Creatures begins with Christopher and Mal meeting and going into the archipelago to protect Mal from a man trying to murder her. Christopher has just discovered that he is a guardian, which is someone from our world who protects portals into the archipelago, a hidden land where mythical creatures exist and where Mal's from. Christopher and Mal quickly become friends and head out across the archipelago to save it from a dark magic that is killing the land and creatures in it. On their adventures, they discover Mal is the Immortal, a being that is supposed to care for a magical tree that makes the archipelago and everything in it possible. Together, they must give Mal her full capability as the Immortal in order to fight the being that has taken over the tree and save the archipelago and the whole world.
Okay, great. And before we wanted to mention a few things off the bat, but I did have a question for you guys that we did not address prior to talking today, which is, if she's immortal, like, how does she die? Spoiler alert, she dies at the end. If you're immortal, so is the soul just being passed down?
Yeah, they
Is
just
that what you
they
guys
keep
understood?
getting reborn in different bodies.
Yeah, it's like an
Okay.
immortal.
With all the memories.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right.
Immortal Soul. Okay. So this is a children's book. If you look up online, it's like ages 9 and up. And that's right off the bat, I want to say that to people. So if you have a young reader in your life, I would really recommend this book to them. It's PG. It has great themes of like friendship and being independent and navigating certain like sticky situations, I think. But yeah, it is a children's book, and I didn't really know that until we started reading it. And I don't think you guys did either, or you did know.
I knew, yeah.
I knew when I
Okay. Oh well,
looked it up for last time.
yeah, I was gonna say we talked about it last time. Okay. Yeah, so it's a children's book, and because of that, we talked about pacing as part of the conversation about The Bright Sword by Lev Grossman, one of our past books. And I think that we wanted to start by talking about pacing with this book because it is a children's book. And Phil, I think you really wanted to especially talk about that.
Yeah, I guess I thought it wasn't something that I've considered, but it was wild to me, the just amount of things that needed to be happening to keep younger readers engaged. And I think that it's weird because when I read reviews on Goodreads, there's certain things that I'm like, okay, if this person is saying this, I'm not going to like this book. Like
Yeah.
if it's like
What? Can you give us an example?
too romantic or like too sappy, especially coming from a book that's like already written as a romance. I'm like, okay, this is probably going to be a little much for me. Or just
Right.
like the magic system doesn't make any sense. Too slow though. I rarely am like, okay, like I can do a slow book. I don't find the lack of action slow. I think a lot of people think lack of action slow, whereas I think introducing so many characters and having that explanation, that is slow to me. So I don't like that. But this book was nonstop action. It was nonstop moving, like physical movement almost. And that sounds so elementary to describe it that way, but there was no, even conversations were very short, and they were just aboard a traveling ship on the way from one crazy island to another. And it was just like, boom, boom, like, oh, the conversation's over. And that was just, I guess I didn't realize that that is true. And that's really where you can see the children aspect, I guess. And I think that that's one of the things that's a little opaque sometimes when books are characterized as young adult. Like, what is it? I mean, sometimes it's just like swearing, but not every adult book swears, and not every adult book has sexual scenes. So what is the thing that sort of separates it? And I think one of the things is this just nonstop action. And so I have another thing that it might be, but I want to turn that over to you guys before we get off track.
In reading this, I realized I have not read a
True
young
children's
adult.
book.
Yeah, I would say this is before young adult. Whatever
It is.
the
Yeah.
category between
Magic Treehouse and young adult.
Yeah,
I would say this is very Magic Treehouse-esque.
I thought of Magic Treehouse as soon as I started reading this book.
See, I think if you would go back and read Magic, because I did,
but then I
and
can't remember.
So Magic Treehouse are 60. You could read Magic Treehouse in 25 minutes.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So, yeah, whatever that is. But this was very Magic Treehouse-esque to my 31-year-old brain remembering back.
Yeah.
And I think...
Wow, you're so old.
I know.
I was like, oh my God, I can't believe you just said you're 31.
Yeah, laugh it
Sorry.
up, fuzzball.
Phoebe's really
I'm
been,
close to 30.
really
Really roasting Isaac.
Yeah, I need to put a hat on.
Only out of love. Only out of love.
So, yeah, I guess I just like didn't it the constant move. I thought you described it great. It was constant movement.
Yeah.
There was no there was a time when most books, if they were written at a higher level reading, there would have been some like describing of feelings or dialogue in between it. And I think Phil, you talked about this before. You had actually really paying attention, because if you zoned out even for a second, you could miss an entire segment of the story that was necessary to fit in later into the plot. Which I did and had to reverse multiple times. I was also using Phoebe's Audible, and I think we were skipping each other sometimes. So that could have added to some confusion.
That could have been bad.
Especially in the beginning. The beginning took me like forever to get through because I was, I think, not paying good enough attention and listening at Phoebe's spots. So I was like, what the hell is this pet? It took me forever to figure out that it was the griffin.
Yeah. No, but that wasn't totally clear. I do agree. Like I think they were calling it different names and it wasn't totally clear what it was. So that was also fair. But the jumping around was hard.
It's weird to say it was an obviously lower reading level, yet I'm talking
It was
about
obvious.
cerebral. I had to like pay attention far more, I think, than a normal book that I'm used to listening to because you could be missing a lot of stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. I think I liked what you said too, Phil, about this, like the young adult genre about needing to be constantly engaging. And it kind of like you guys both talking about this kind of jogged my thought of like young adult where they're kind of over explaining interpersonal relationships, which I think you would also wanted to touch on, Phil.
That was the second thing, yeah.
Yeah, but then the other thing was, so that's on one hand, but then there's like, so there's young adult or this in between genre of probably, I would say 8 to 9, depending on reading level, to about 13, 12 or 13 that I think this book would be perfect for. But thinking about it, it was still enjoyable. I still thought the writing was good. I liked it better than The Bright Sword, by the way. I read it in one shot, so that really helped me because it is so short. Like I didn't break ever, so I could really follow what was going on. But then it reminds me of Mind Games by Nora Roberts, where they were also kind of over-explaining these interpersonal relationships, but it was just bad writing.
Yeah.
So this was good writing. It was the audience was clear from basically from the start. And I think it was written well. It was just for a young audience. And like you were saying, Phil, that's kind of a staple of a young adult or even younger. Maybe we'll call it like a younger adult genre. So I thought I wanted to say I thought it was well written. I did think the pacing was fast, but to me it was easier to follow than Bright Sword and more entertaining.
I think this is it's not niche. I don't want to say niche, but it is a very narrow corridor of when this book is written for.
Appropriate.
And it's not like it's not appropriate at any other time because obviously we liked it, like we all read it. But I do think it's an exact like 8 to 12 because then you have like Percy Jackson, which is definitely young adult, but I'm also reading that right now, completely different read. Like a completely different setup. And then the Magic Treehouse, which we sorted like remembering to blend that in is also just much more infantile than this book. So I do think that like I'm really eager, I guess, to hear what you guys sort of recommend. Because I do think it's a narrow, but also like very important on reading because it's a difference between chapter books and young adult. Like I think it's the gap it fills there, but I think it's an important sort of time to read.
It's hooking you into reading. I mean, this story, like it's the first. I don't want to draw this comparison, but I do think it's kind of like the Sorcerer's Stone, where it's way different than by the time you're getting to the last book of the Harry Potter series. It's obviously not on the same level at all, but yeah, it's a really important time for readers people who are getting into reading, like that 8 to 12 year range, to be hooked on something. So,
and I do think there's a lot of cool, because of the over explanation and because this is a good book though, there's a lot of cool quotes that you can pull for this. Like the quotes about friendship, quotes about just powerful things.
It's like sorry is for farting near the fruit bowl. I loved that one. Or I liked this one too, and I think it's more on the line of like growing up a little bit. It is a talent to learn to dress like yourself. I like that really resonated with me as an adult who's someone who's into fashion and stuff like
really
that.
Cool.
I included the line right after that, Phoebe. Beauty is overrated, but it's not a sin.
Yeah.
Oh, I like that second part. Yeah.
So like because of this, like because of these sort of over explanation, there's some really powerful things that you can take from this. Mine was do not wait for people to be flawless before you allow yourself to adore them. Adore them anyway.
Aww.
And that was like a really good one too.
I had that as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I really do like this genre, and I think that just because it's for young adults or before this age range, like you can get a ton out of it.
Well, let's talk about the books then, Phil, since you were interested to
Yeah.
hear the compare contrast. And maybe you could start to jog us.
Yeah. So my two, I think I'll leave Narnia for someone else, but my first one was actually Oversea Under Stone, which is The Dark Rising by Susan Cooper. I mean, it's yeah, again, like I can't really describe it. You could read one chapter of that book and be like, okay, this is exactly the same audience. It's basically about a family, and it sounds very Narnia, but it's about a British family where they're exploring a house, but it's actually like an Arthurian. It is like they're finding that King Arthur used to live there. It's not as fantastical, but then they're sort of like some of the townspeople are evil, and they're trying to prevent them from finding the Grail that's hidden in this town. And it's just three kids that are just searching for this Grail using the town, and it's really very good. And then the other one that I wanted to read or wanted to share is just like such a classic that we never read as a kid, but it's The Never Ending Story, where a guy basically finds a book, like a really, really old book in his attic, and just starts reading it. And that's sort of like the theme of it. They're all sort of adventure, finding these fantastical worlds, and I think that those are the two that I would definitely recommend.
Yeah, I'm wondering, Isaac, if, and I think Phil, you're probably going to provide the most like niche books anyway, so you're a good person to start this conversation. But I'm wondering, Isaac, if the Alana, that series would be a recommendation that you would have.
Yeah, that's the so I not the Alana, but there's a series called The Immortals by Tamara Pierce, which is the same world, and her Diana or Diane, I can't remember, is the main character, and I think they call them mages, so she can talk to animals and actually go, like, she can't turn into an animal, but her like soul or being or conscience can go into an animal and use it, kind of.
Yeah,
So that's but there's also like mythical creatures. So I mean, like I said, I read this,
a long time ago.
yeah, like early middle school. So I can't remember everything, but there was griffins, and I think I said this in other podcasts. Like the griffin, if arrows were fletched with griffin feathers, they were like never missed. They're always like very
Oh
accurate.
yeah.
And I know she like went into a hyena, and the hyenas have like really good smell, so she like tracked down some bad guy as a hyena. But I think those are even a level above this. So though, if this is 8 to
Yeah.
12, that is maybe like 11 to 15. Yeah, this age group, I kind of struggled. I think all mine are slightly above or
Older.
below. So I immediately thought of the Magic Treehouse. And I don't know if it was just like kind of the very simplistic writing or like the boy and girl combo, with a little bit of fantasy in there. But I thought of Magic Treehouse right away. The Immortals by Tamara Pierce. Phil said The Chronicles of Narnia. I think the difference between this and like the Chronicles of Narnia, Harry Potter, those kind of two are like the large in the young adult fantasy world, is that you as a full grown mature adult can take a Harry Potter book or the Chronicles of Narnia and read it, and I believe be engrossed and enjoy the series over and over
Yeah.
again. Like I said multiple
More
times,
engrossed.
yeah, I fall asleep to
Goodness.
Harry Potter every night. One, just because it's like a noise and I know the story, so I can just pick off after the timer goes off. But I think the same thing would be true for the Chronicles of Narnia. Whereas this one, I don't believe, if you were not reading this, if you just went to read this book for complete pleasure, not for a book club or something, you would be like, "Ooh, I misjudged this one. Put it back and then
Yeah.
grab another
Right.
one."
Yeah, good. That's so true.
But for someone who is like a librarian or a teacher or at this reading level, it's I think an awesome book.
Yeah.
I do want to say that Isaac recommending a Tamara Pierce, though, is like, take that with a grain of salt. I'm pretty sure he recommended Tamara Pierce after Dead Wake last week. So, like, he's just everything. You should probably read the Alana series.
Honestly, if you haven't read it, just read it by now. Like, everyone who's listening.
What's
needs to read
crazy
this
is they're
series.
kind of old though. The first one I think was written in like the early '90s.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That is
but
wild.
yeah, they were
I
great
think
as a kid.
I
For
think
sure.
it's funny, like, not trying to flex on our listeners, but I do feel a little bit like if you're at a reading level, and like this isn't really a topic we want to talk about, but just hearing you guys recommend things, I would recommend the Graceling series by Kristen Cashore or like Compare and Contrast, because that's very nostalgic for me. But again, you're bleeding a little bit into the more like intimate romance that I don't necessarily know would be appropriate for this age range.
That's definitely
Or it would
higher than this for sure.
Yeah. So I think I'm like, did we just never read at an 8th grade, like an 8-year-old level? We skipped right on to being able to read.
Okay. Well, you guys just have bad memories, so I think that we did. I think
mean,
that
we
the
had to
Ranger's
have.
Apprentice is this one. If you read the Guardians of Gahul, which was about the owls. If you read the Warriors,
I had the
about the
cats.
cats,
Yes, the
that's this
Warriors.
level. It's this
Wait.
exact level. So
You think, Phil?
yeah,
Really?
so 100%. That's like the same age range.
Okay.
It was it was like 4th to 6th grade. It was just really
Yeah.
quick. But we were also sort of reading above our reading level at that same time.
Yeah.
I think the one that we missed was actually, and again, not to flex, but like our dad was a librarian. The one that we missed is under Magic Treehouse, was like what a librarian would call just chapter books. There were some like just lower than that were like 40 to 50 pages that we did not really read, just because we went like Magic Treehouse is really our starter after
Yeah.
Spot. It was Spot to Magic Treehouse.
And you're saying there's something in between that.
Yeah.
I forgot about the Warriors. If you haven't read about the cats that
Yeah.
are fighting each
So
other, read that.
That's an interesting, because that would be like the not the cats, but there's ones where they're like all different animals. That I think it's Bernard
Also
Cornwell, the
fight.
same one that writes the Viking series. So I'm trying to, and obviously it's hard to know what your past self would do, but I don't see myself like I was reading. If I don't believe Ranger's Apprentice is in the same level, because at 15 or
Yeah.
16, I was still enjoying those books. But is that because of the reading level, or just the story was
That
good
one
enough
might have
to
been that
pull me
yeah.
back to this lower reading level? Because I don't
Yeah.
think at even 12 I would
would've
have
been
enjoyed this
engaged.
book.
So maybe it's a bad book.
I don't think
My
it's a
Father's
bad book.
Dragon. My Father's Dragon, where he goes to the island, and he has his dragon, and the dragon eats the tangerine peels, but he doesn't like the tangerine. Okay, well, you guys obviously didn't spend enough time with Dad as a child, because me and Dad had a lot of alone time. But no, that one is exactly like this level as well, which is like a little bit in between. Sorry to cut
But
you off,
Isaac, but you
I
were
think you're
saying-
right with the Ranger's Apprentice is a little bit above this one. I will give you that for sure.
So you guys think it's a good book. Like, we're all in agreement on that this was a good book for that age range.
I think
Yes.
so, yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. And I hope people don't think that we're now just talking about how like good of readers we are, or how smart we are, or whatever, because that
I
is
hope
not
they do think that about us.
that is not the intention of kind of these comments. But it is just, I think no 8-year-old is listening to this. I mean, barely anyone is listening to this, but no 8-year-old
Right,
is
true.
definitely listening.
Weird
is
that this
definitely
is
not
an
listening to
audiobook.
this.
That's a good point. I did not think about that. Yeah.
No, I think he's saying that
no,
no
the
one's listening to this podcast.
Oh, I'm saying it's sort of weird that this is an audiobook as well. Like,
I don't
what
think so,
little
'cause in the
kids
car-
listen to audiobooks?
Think about like in the car
I
if
think
you're
it's just
a
easy
mom
to
with
turn
young
any
kids
published book
or
into an
dad.
audiobook.
No, I think
Yeah.
so too, but I just think now that I'm thinking of it, like I didn't listen to audiobooks until I had a device to listen to the audiobook,
You
which I
listen
think
to
is past
audiobooks
this
in the
That's
age.
not
car.
true, Phil. We went on
No,
road
but I
trips.
listened to Dad's audiobooks. I listened to the guy beating himself.
Yeah, but
No, you listened to
Dad
Harry
had
Potter.
the ability to put in books at your level. He just didn't. And then
True. True.
Okay,
anyway,
well, we
we
beat this
digress.
point to
What
death.
I wanted to
Yeah.
say is that we are not trying to be like, oh, we're so smart, we never read this. It is difficult as an adult reader to think back and be like, at what point would I have enjoyed this book?
Yeah. As someone who's not an educator of small children.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right.
But I think a like elementary school teacher, our father, elementary school librarian, would know exactly what kid to give this to, and they would enjoy it immensely.
Yeah.
Should we FaceTime Dad in?
No.
Give the rec. Just at the most he's doing the most out of
Absolutely
pocket
not.
thing ever. But, okay, well, so we've beat that point to death, as I already said. So I think the last thing that we really wanted to talk about was teeing up mythical characters. And I'm very passionate about this topic because we're reading Gods of the Weirdwood, and I'm actually reading the Stormlight Archives right now. And I think it's been like you guys were saying that you don't think fantasy as an like for an adult reader is good unless you're trying to figure out what the characters are and the mythical creatures are not being described to you. And I just vehemently disagree with that point. Like I want the thing described to me. I still don't know what a sky eel is, and
So the sky
I'm a
eel,
book and a
that
half
is like
into the
the one.
Stormlight Archive.
That's like the one creature that, yes, that is like.
Then why
the
mention it?
specific sky eel is. Well, one, it's important later in the plot that you don't know what that is because they don't really know
Okay.
what it is. But I will say that's like everyone complains specifically about the sky eel. They're like, everyone
Okay.
keeps talking about the sky eel. What the heck's the sea? So it's not
Yeah.
like you in like picking up, I want to know what the sky eel is. And I think that if Brandon Sanderson were to rewrite after hearing everybody so confused
He
about the
would
sky eel, he probably would have gotten
give more
that. Yeah.
context. So Isaac, for you, yeah, Brandon Sanderson wrote the Stormlight Archives. He also wrote Mistborn, but I'm reading the Stormlight Archives right now because the new one's coming out here soon, and I have never read them. And it's good, but I want a little bit more description about what's about the mythical things, and I that's part of the intrigue of this particular plot line. But yeah, I think I'd be more engaged if I knew. I think Harry Potter describes what everything is, and I'm
So
totally cool with that.
I'm going to take what Phil kind of said about what he sort of thinks of as a slow book, and being bogged down in the deliberate explanation of every single mythical creature is completely unnecessary. But that doesn't mean you can't describe these new beings that are being introduced. But you can't just be like, and Hagrid brought in the hippogriff. A hippogriff is a half horse, half winged thing that you have to bow to. Like, she describes this hippogriff, which I'd never heard of until reading Harry Potter, because Hagrid it's part of the plot in Hagrid teaching it, and it's part of the plot in Harry like having to bow to it, and then it bites. You get a picture of this beast through the plot and through the storytelling.
Completely agree. Yeah, you're not trying to give like a dictionary definition, but I'm looking for a description right up front of what this thing is.
Yeah, I think that
like,
it isn't always necessary though, because that's like kind of the point of fantasy. Like you are, I think it is impressive to have this world that nobody knows except because of the reason that like nobody knows it except for through how you are writing about it, and giving just enough context clues to figure it out and let the reader's imagination build its own picture of the stuff. Like I think Phoebe kind of teed it up. We're reading we're reading some of RJ Barker's books, and we're actually having him on the podcast going to be interviewing and releasing another special episode. So everybody get excited for
Tune
that.
in.
It's going to be very
Yeah.
cool.
I
But
believe he won the science fiction writer award of all of the British Isles in 2020.
Wow.
So
yeah,
he's
so it's a huge deal.
Yeah.
I'm sure
Very
he has like a
excited.
website, many
Yeah.
series. I'm reading the Bone Ship series as well, which is great. But in Gods of the Weirwood, every single character or every single animal and a lot of like the
foreign.
wildlife is completely different. Like there's
Mm-hmm.
nothing that has existed. He's made it all up. And while that can be like, if you're just like, oh, I want to know what it is, that's the point of fantasy. Use your
Yeah.
imagination, and it can be whatever you want it to be.
Yeah.
Like I think probably all three of us have a completely different idea of what a gas maw looks like.
Yeah.
But that's what the point of fantasy is. So like, embrace it, lean into
I
it.
love that. I really
Mic drop.
I do love that. I think that the analogy, I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm a huge Harry Potter fan. Maybe not to Isaac's level where I listen to it every night, but I do love it. But I think that sometimes the analogy to Harry Potter is a little bit stretched.
Overdone.
I think that's well, remember it's taking place in England, so like it's not all made up. Like it's also for a little bit of a younger reader, and there's not
Yeah.
like Brandon Sanderson is not only creating this world, like he's actually creating this universe that connects, different physics, it's not just like, oh, all physics
crazy.
applies until Avada Kedavra, then physics is out the window. It's like everything is different. And like the Gods of the Weirdwood, I think what I loved about that one was, and I think the best way to do it, and I've tried to sort of sequester it out, the best way to do it is you're learning with the characters. And I think that that's what's great. They don't know what's in the woods. Like to them, it's almost mythology as well. And I think George R.R. Martin does this fantastic in the Game of Thrones, where like the dragons, people don't know what dragons are. Like there's this sort of history of it, but like the reader learns about the dragons with the people. I think that's great. I think the other way that sometimes people do it is it comes up in sort of either not a prequel, but like an intro to the book where you learn about it. And I think that's actually so hard. Like that is really hard to get through. If anyone can remember East of Eden, Steinbeck does this, not fantasy, where he has to describe the valley. And there are 12 pages of the worst literature I've ever read in my entire life. It is literally description of farmland, but it's like necessary for the book.
The
but
first
it's
page
just
does
like,
not endorse these comments.
but it's horrible. Like it's
Sounds beautiful
so
to me.
slow because it's just like there's no plot. He just has to describe this farm valley. And then the last one to do it is The Lord of the Rings, where like everything is actually just published in an encyclopedia apart from The Lord of the Rings. And that's like a little bit of a cop out there. But that's like what you have to do if you're going to make this crazy enough sort of fantasy. Like you got to pick a way to do it. And it is really difficult. I think my favorite is learning alongside the characters. And that's what both R.J. Barker does in Gods of the Weirdwood and Brandon Sanderson does in the Stormlight Archives, where it's a little bit, it's usually teed up where this happened way in the past.
Right.
And they're like relearning about it.
Yeah.
So one last thing, and I just want to give a shout out because the only way to actually do this, I think 100% effectively, is how Michael J. Sullivan does it. And he writes every single word of the series before he publishes a single book. So the entire series is done. So the Riviera Chronicles is done. And it really, it is crazy to read. But that's the only sort of way that you can read back and be like, okay, actually, I explained this enough. It makes sense in my head how it's being read in the first book, whereas I was already writing the fifth book. And like, but that is like such a bold move because
it's hard.
What if the entire series sucks? You just wasted like 6 years of your life. But the Riviera Chronicles, I could not recommend highly enough. He's fantastic because that's how he writes. And he writes in the beginning of his books, like, this is how I write. It's not for everybody, but it helps me a lot. And I think that that's
Dang.
maybe the only foolproof way to do it.
That's really cool. I want to read that series now that you're talking about that.
Yeah.
I think we've established maybe I need to be a little bit better of a fantasy reader and not be so lazy and just want everything explained to me. But I think there's a happy medium, and you guys have perfectly described how to kind of go about that, or how it works best for you in your mind. So I don't need to. Yeah, I think I like an explanation, but I think it is fun. That is the beauty of fantasy for sure. And since we've already really talked about books that we would recommend, or books that drew nostalgia from us from Impossible Creatures, so books that were like Impossible Creatures that we would recommend to our listeners, I think we could rate the book and sign off. So I give it a 2. I think I would recommend it to anyone who's has a young reader in their life and is trying to get them more into reading, or trying to give them something else to read if they are just devouring everything that they touch. Isaac?
Yeah, I would give it a 2. It's for kids. Give it to kids. Give it to adults that have kids or want to get kids to read.
Yeah. Cool. And then really right before we go, we always like to talk about what books we are reading next time. And so the book we will be reading next time is A Calamity of Souls by David Baldacci. Isaac, could you just tell us briefly about what that book is about?
Yes. Set in the tumultuous year of 1968 in Southern Virginia, a racially charged murder case sets a duo of white and black lawyers against a deeply unfair system as they work to defend their wrongfully accused black defendants in this courtroom drama.
All right, this is your bi-weekly reminder to call someone that you love, tell them about Beyond the First Page podcast. If they haven't checked out our TikTok, we're doing book reviews almost every day on there, so tell them to check that out as well. And also share with them a good book. Maybe they have a kid and you can share Impossible Creatures with them. And until we talk again, stay classy, second pagers. We'll see you later.
See you guys.
Let's go beyond.